Where should I stand? All right, I get nervous at these things, so just give me a moment. So I want to start off by saying, first, I dedicate today's presentation to the veterans who have all fought for our freedom. My grandfather died last month. He was married to his wife for 72 years, and the last decade he took care of her. I have this inherent passion to work for our community, and I miss them dearly, and I dedicate this presentation to them and all our veterans in the audience and around the world. As you know, I'm Noel Hidalgo. I also go by No Neck. This is my 10th PDF, and I can say that I've come of age through the personal democracy era. I'm here to bear a collective witness to our civic hacking story. I, like my mother and father, were born into a family of servicemen and women, and I pretty much popped out of her wearing an Air Force uniform and combat boots. I'm a Puerto Rican. I grew up a practicing Mormon in the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio, and on top of that, we were Macintosh users. For most of my life, I have spent what Timothy Leary calls, for most of my life, I've been searching for what Timothy Leary calls the others. After high school, I dropped out of college, wandered the East Coast as an economic refugee, and I moved to New York City on the 1st of August, 2004. My first 3 years were spent working for the saddest bunch of Democrats in the New York State, the state Senate. During those years, I met abused protesters, salacious roller skating parties, people building backyard jet engines, presidential campaign refugees, most of you, and people talking about this really amazing website, Personal Democracy Forum. In the Lower East Side, I met a group of radical techies who were using open source technology and radical inclusion to connect underrepresented communities to the internet. They taught me about New York City's history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, how the city's water supply became a public utility, how Central Park was designed by a bunch of amateurs, the base of the Statue of Liberty was a crowdsourced campaign. As these conversations were happening, the internet seemed to explode with its own radical social movement. I kind of blame Yohai and the wealth of networks. By the fall of 2006, code is law became a maxim. The free culture movement had permeated blogs, startups, social sharing sites like Couchsurfing. Bar camps were birthed, user groups and meetups were exploding, and the idea of co-working was seeded. As an organizer of these events here in New York City, I wanted to see how they played out on the other side of the internet. On 7/7/07, I left my friends. With a blog, a camera, and a phone, I hitchhiked around the world for 8 months. In Israel, I met conservatives and liberals working together to improve open source software projects. In Cairo, I met the Drupal community and the Linux community advocating for a free press and for a transparent and accountable government. In Cambodia, I found a disgruntled European technologist building open source hardware and software to give the Khmer a digital presence. In in Bangkok, I introduced bar camps to a small community that would end up organizing the world's largest bar camp in one of the world's most oppressive governments. Bit by bit, I found technologists using their talents to improve their local communities. Strengthened by a global commitment to openness and solidarity, these net natives were starting to tackle large systemic problems. As geeks around the world celebrated the arrival of the iPhone and the global economic markets were collapsing, civic technologists were being born. In 2008, Apple changed all of our lives. That summer, the iOS App Store was born. 4 months later, Nancy Scola and Allison Fine, then working for Personal Democracy Forum, mused on the use of hashtags to track election issues and robocalls. Thanks to Deanna Zant, where is she? I ended up on a very large email thread. Within a week, we had collected all the necessary social, institutional, and technological bits to combine APIs, shortcodes, native mobile apps, and distributive workflows into one seamless operation. Within a course of a month, Twitter Vote Report was JFDI'd. For the first time in our civic-y, techie community, we organized and built and deployed an election protection tool for our nation's most popular election. On Election Day, we poured into New York City's first co-working office, and everything seemed to work smoothly. That following spring, fueled by Twitter Vote Report and the Gov 2.0 fever, which also you all helped institute, reading this, Haley Cooper Ryder launched New York City's Open Government Meetup. Our very first meetup was in April, and I know some familiar faces from this particular meetup are in this room very today, and it only had 29 people. After a somewhat contentious conversation, we decided to have a second meeting. Those who came to the second meeting voted to create a safe space for government and citizens to collaborate. We called ourselves the Open NY Forum, and we started to host monthly events in the spirit of unconferences. You know that eternal line, what has happened before will happen again? Well, we were not the first to advocate for such a space. In 1974, New York City Mayor Beam signed an executive order establishing an Office of Electronic Data Processing in the Municipal Services Administration. This is actually one of the first references to New York City government being driven by data. In the 1980s, a small group of good government activists petitioned for the creation of the Public Advocate's Office and an introduction to a new oversight body. Chaired by the Public Advocate, the Commission on Public Information and Communication, aka COPIC, featured representatives from the Mayor's Office, City Council, the Technology Office, and the public. In April 1993, COPIC oversaw the publication of the nation's first municipal data directory. Today, we call these things data catalogs. Roughly 20 years into the future, one of these activists is elected a city council member. Gail Brewer was somehow, as she describes it, given punishment and was appointed the chairperson of the City Council's Technology Committee. You can meet her later on this afternoon. As the New York City's technology community was also being sued for scraping MTA data, Councilwoman Gail Brewer introduced what would become the city's first open data law on 11 February 2010. This first version was really, really aggressive, and as exciting as it was, the bill quickly lost traction. Seeking a way to invigorate support, a small group of good government groups and civic technologists were gathered together as the New York City Transparency Working Group. I should note that the two who spearheaded this, John Caney and Gene Rushinoff, themselves are unconventional civic hackers. John helped create the first New York City crash map, which we have taken as part of our advocacy work. And Gene has been advocating for transparency and open information for decades. In other words, I finally found my others. For 2 years, behind closed doors, we fought the Bloomberg administration. Together, we pulled apart each other's languages, we learned each other's vulnerabilities. Good government groups, government, civic technologists all came to a shared vision. Collectively, we preserved the integrity of the original bill. With a handful of exceptions, we strengthened the milestones and added public oversight. After 755 days, Mayor Bloomberg signed Local Law 11 into 2012. Mind you, this is a quick turnaround, and all parties had something vested in this law. But this law helped us define what is a civic hacker. Once again, using the code as law maxim, anyone who can sling code, who can sling law or policy can proudly call themselves a civic hacker. And to us, a civic hacking community isn't complete until you have advocates, designers, developers, government representatives all sitting next to each other and understanding each other. We cannot build a government for the people, by the people, without all the people. Last year, thank you. Last year, we had to rename ourselves to Beta NYC. While we were fighting for the city's open data law, we happened to write a memo to then Attorney General Andrew Cuomo. We called it Open NY, hoping to be invited to the party. Instead, we learned that the governor had launched a program called Open NY through Twitter. So today, Beta NYC's, its vision is to build a connected New York City for the people, by the people, for the 21st century. Our values are rooted in the city's progressive history, as you saw earlier today. We have taken FDR's 4 freedoms and placed them at our bedrock. Just like our grandparents, we're fighting for the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom from want, and the freedom from fear. As I said, our theory of change is simple. We want to create a safe space for government and community to collaborate. Our advocacy is closely tied to our products and events. Everything is a tool for action. As we liberate new data sets, we immediately seek out to find inconsistencies and provide feedback. At times, our feedback turns into a new round of advocacy, and we create a virtuous cycle. Last year, we wrote the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City. In it, we outlined 34 recommendations that humanize technology, move beyond transparency for transparency's sake, and ensure that government technology works for the people, built by the people. Our collective mission is simple. We're working to empower our future while helping solve the problems of today. Both Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer and City Council member Ben Kalos, two elected officials who proudly call themselves civic hackers, are taking this roadmap and turning it into programs and legislation. There's a workshop in the afternoon, come. If you can make it happen here, you can make it happen anywhere. New York City's population is the size of LA, Chicago, and Houston combined. We have more children in our public schools than Boston has residents. Our city housing authority has more residents than the city of Oakland. To manage ourselves, we have a distributive network of community boards. These community boards are made up of 50 volunteers and 1 full-time staff member. They have non-binding votes, and tacitly they set the tone of what should and shouldn't happen in communities. As civic hackers, we are helping create effective local power. Over the last 6 months, we have campaigned to make New York City's open data useful. Frequently, we are quoted as saying we want the data to have a date, time, location, and as complete as possible, and if you can provide it in machine-readable format, that'd be great. As part of the mayor's vision to eliminate pedestrian deaths, we've lobbied the NYPD to release crash data in a better format. For the first time, citizens and their community boards are able to see when and where the most dangerous intersections are located. As part of Vision Zero, community boards and local advocates are starting to use this data to make the city's streets safer. This year, New York City Big Apps relaunched, following a similar platform that we pioneered last year. Within this platform, the technology and design communities are asked to solve real-world issues: economic mobility, education, job training, Vision Zero. And our third big win has been part of the City Council rules reform. We convinced the Speaker to introduce a public technology plan, provide bulk data access to legislation, and we have a civic hacker in charge of the City Council's Government Operations Committee. To sustain this activity, Beta NYC needs to evolve. As the nation's largest local civic hacker community, we need to hire full-time organizers and build a curriculum that demystifies technology. We want STEM and vocational-based education programs to embrace citizen science, open data, and civic technology. We want to teach a diverse future that all apps should have civic components. To me, civic technology, or civic hacking 102, is an understanding that we are just the tip of the spear. Without broader community outreach and support, we will not pierce the 20th century's armor. In the end, civic hacking has become a deeply personal journey. Through time and persistence, the most insurmountable obstacles have been eroded. Politics makes strange bedfellows. Be prepared. The future is unwritten. Thank you.